Hi everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So in this video, I'm going to discuss about what are the various definitions and terminologies what we are going to be followed in data management and representation subject. So very first thing is that what is the data? So we have to be know. So the data management and representation before going to see that what is the data actually. So the data according to the grammatical point of view. So datum is nothing but a singular and then the data is nothing but a plural. So according to the dictionary what the data defines is that so it is data regarding about the facts or figures from which the conclusions may be drawn. Okay. So the dictionary defines the data as figures or facts from which conclusions may be drawn. And then it also going to be defined as a collective recording of observations, either numerical or otherwise be called as a data. So a collective recording of observations, either numerical or is called as a data. So what is the data? Definition is that so the data is raw, unorganized facts that need to be processed. Okay, so the data is nothing but a raw and unorganized facts that are need to be processed. And second one is that what are the different forms of data? So the different forms of data are text, numerical, multimedia, modules, models, software, domain specific, and intensive specific. So these are various forms of data here. Okay. So the very first thing is that so what is the data? So data is nothing but it is a raw and unorganized facts. Okay, that are need to be processed. So what are the different forms of data? So the data may be in the form of text, or it may be in the form of numerical, or it may be in the form of multimedia data, or it can be in the form of model data, and then software data, and then domain specific data, and instrument specific data. So statistics is the tool for converting the data. So what is the statistics is the question that may become. So statistic is the tool for converting the data into information. Okay. So statistic is the concept which converts the data into information. So but we have to be know some questions like where does the data come from, and then how it is going to be gathered, and then how we're going to ensure its accurateness, and is the data reliable, is it the representation of the population from which it was drawn. So these are the some of the questions that may come before going to gather the data. Okay, so normally the statistics is going to be gather the data and transform into information. So before that we may get some of the questions like where does the data come from, that is the question. Then how it is going to be gathered, and then how do we I can able to ensure it is an accurate data or not, and then whether the data is reliable or not. That kind of questions that may come. And next question that may come is what are the various methods of collecting data. Okay, so what are the different types of methods that are available for collecting the data? So the first one is that direct observation, and then experiments is the other one, and surveys. So these are the some of the methods that are available for collecting the data. Okay, first one is the direct observation, and second thing is that experiments, and through surveys also can able to collect the data. So this is the question that may come. So what are the various methods that are available for collecting the data? And so how this data is going to be classified normally? So what are the different types of data or different categories of data that my question may come? So for that what I have to do is, so first thing is that qualitative data and quantitative data. So the quantitative data means again it is going to be divided into two categories like a discrete data and then continuous data, right? So based on the nature of the variable, so the data is going to be classified into two broader categories. So first one is the qualitative data and second one is quantitative data. So again, this quantitative data will be of two types. The first thing is the discrete data, and the second one is continuous data. So what is qualitative data? So that thing I have to be explained now. So qualitative data is nothing but when the data is going to be collected based on the attributes or qualities like cavity, mesclons, and sex, etc. So based on the attributes, the data what we're going to be gathered is going to be considered as a qualitative data. So the question what is coming here is what is qualitative data? So the qualitative data is nothing but so when the data what is going to be collected based on attributes or qualities like sex and malacompositions and cavity, etc. like this. And this what is quantitative data? So that is the question may appear. So what is quantitative data? Okay, so the quantitative data is nothing but the data which is going to be collected through uh, measurements like arc length and then flow rate, concentration, etc. like this. So this type of data what we're collecting that should be considered as the quantitative data. So the data which is going to be collected through measurements like arc length, fluoride concentration, etc. This kind of things will comes under quantitative data. So the quantitative data is going to be characterized by numbers, whereas the qualitative data is going to be characterized by words. Then discrete, what is discrete data? So the discrete data is nothing but when the variable under observation takes only the fixed values like whole numbers, that data will be considered as a discrete data. So discrete data is nothing but when a variable comes under observation that takes only the fixed values like whole numbers, that thing should be considered as a discrete data. And then continuous data. So continuous data is nothing but if the variable can take any value in the given range or decimal or fraction, that thing should be considered as the continuous data. Right? So if the variable which is going to take any value in the given range, decimal or fraction, so that thing should be considered as a continuous data. Then define codebook. So what is the variable in data management? So these are some of the questions that may come. So codebook, what is the codebook actually? So the codebook which is going to be describe the contents and then structure and layout of the data collection. Okay, so data book is nothing but which is going to be describe the contents, structure and layout of the data collection is nothing but the codebook. Or a well documented codebook contains the information that intend to complete and self-explanatory for each variable in the data file. Okay, so the well documented codebook contains the information that is intended to be complete and self-explanatory for each variable in the data file is nothing but a well documented codebook. And what is a variable in normal data management here is, so the variable usually contains the data from observations such as score from a questionnaire, age or sex. So that thing we can able to define as a variable here. So, right? So what is a variable in data management means a variable usually contains the data from observations such as score, from questionnaires, age or sex. So there are different types of variables that is having influence on the study. So that is independent variables and then dependent variables and active and attribute variables and continuous and discrete and categorical variables and extraneous variables and demographic variables. So these are some of the different types of variables that may come in data management subject. So what is a not variable is the question data management here. So not the database management system. So here the variable usually contains the data from observations such as the score from questionnaire on age and sex. And some of the different types of variables will be independent and dependent variables, active or inactive variables, and then continuous, discrete and categorical variables, extraneous and demographic variables. So next, what are the different types of variables? So just now what I said is the question that may come. So what are different types of variables? Some of the different types of variables will be independent and dependent variables, and active and attribute variables, continuous and discrete and category variables, and extraneous and demographic variables. So these are some of the different types of variables. And what are the principles of file management? So normally are going to be follow some principle before implementing this file management. So some of the eight, we are having some around 8 principles. So first thing should be accountability, transparency, integrity, protection, compliance, accessibility, retention, and dispersion. So these are the some of the principles what you have to be followed for implementing a file management. So the first thing is that accountability is the thing, and transparency, and what is integrity and protection, and then compliance, and then accessibility, and then retention and dispersion. So the like we have to follow these principles. And next question what may come here is what is documentation, right? So the documentation is nothing but which is going to describe the collected data to make it easier to use, retrieve and manage. Okay, so the data documentation takes various forms and describes the data on multiple levels. So data documentation aims to describe the collected data to make it easier to use, retrieve and manage. So the data documentation takes various forms and describes the data on multiple levels. And next thing is that define coding. So the coding of data refers to the process of transforming the collected information or observation to a set of meaningful, cohesive and categories. So it is nothing but the process of summarizing and representing the data in order to provide a systematic account of the recorded and observed phenomenon. Right? So the coding is nothing but data. Coding of data is going to be refers to the process of transforming collected information or observation to a set of meaningful cohesive categories. Okay, so it is nothing but the process of summarizing and representing the data in order to maintain a systematic account of recorded and observed phenomena. And what is the next question that may arise here is what is data cleaning, and then what is data screening. So data cleaning is nothing but the process of fixing and removing incorrect, corrupted, incorrectly formatted, duplicate and incomplete data within the data set. So normally we are going to be gather some data from multiple sources, right? So how the data cleaning is going to be performed? So data cleaning is nothing but a process of fixing or removing incorrect or corrupted or incompletely or incorrectly formatted and duplicate or incomplete data is going to be what is present in the data set. And data screening. So what is the data screening here is, so the data screening means checking the data for errors and fixing or removing these errors is nothing but data screening. Suppose some data errors may come, right? So sometimes it may come some infinity or null values. So the data screening is able to check this data for errors and then fixing and removing these errors. So the exact definition of data screening is that the process of inspecting the data for errors and correcting them prior to doing data analysis. Okay, so the process of intersecting data for errors and correcting them prior to the before implementing the data analysis. And some of the other questions that may cover here is what is secondary data. So secondary data is the data that has been already collected by and readily available from other sources, is nothing but is secondary data. So the secondary data is nothing but the data which is going to be already collected one or readily available from other sources. That thing should be called as a secondary data. And the next thing is that describe conceptual model. So what is the conceptual model here? So conceptual model is one type of diagram, so which is going to be identifying the business concepts or entities and relationship between these concepts in order to gain, reflect and document an understanding of organization business from a data perspective. Okay. So that should be defined as the conceptual model. So the conceptual model is one type of diagram which is going to be used for identifying the business concept actually, and in between the concepts, what type of relationships there. Okay, in order to gain that, reflect on, then document understanding the business purposes. And what are the some of the common data collection methods that are available? So that is the question here. So some of the common data collection methods. So survey, case study, interview, and then observation, group assessment, expert or peer reviews, portfolio reviews, testimonial, tests, photographs, tapes, slides, diaries, journals, logs, document review analysis. These are some of the data collection methods what we're having. So next question, that is, are the data reliable and valid? So this is the question. So validity means, are you measuring what you think you are measuring? And reliability means if something was measured again some instrument, would it produce the same results? So that is the difference between the reliability and then validity. So validity means, are you measuring what you are measuring? Okay, what is the thing you are measuring? Or you think that the measuring is correct or not? That is validity. And reliability means, so if something was measured again and again using the same instrument, will produce the same result. That should be the reliability. And next one thing is that, so what are the various sources of the data? So these are the questions that may come. So some of the main sources of the data will be from surveys and experiments and then reports in OPD. So what the data, in how many ways the data can be collected? That may be a question. How many ways are there for collecting data? So normally we are having two types of sources available. So primary source and then secondary source. So these are the some of the data collection sources. So primary source and secondary source. And next question is that what are the elements of the codebook? So this is an important question that may arise. So normally before implement the coding, the codebook is very important. So for that, what are the fields you have to maintain for implementing this codebook? So first thing is that variable name. So variable name have to be understood, and then what type of variable it is, whether it is a numeric or string, and then missing values you have to be identified, whether what type of missing value it is. So whether it is occur from level of measurement or nominal level or ordinal level, interval level, ratio scale value, or a dichotomy, and then codes. So these are the some of the various elements that are present in the code. Okay, so various elements of the codebook will be variable name have to be identified, and what type of variable it is, whether it is numeric and then string, and then missing values. So and different levels of measurements like nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio scale, and dichotomy, and then code. These are some of the various elements of the codebook here. And then mention some variable names in SPSS. This is another type of question. Some of the rules or variables what we have to be followed in SPSS should be that, so the variable names must include their letters and numbers, and but they should not begin with a letter. So how the variables is going to be declared? Some of this programming languages like C, C++, Java, like there's some variables not to be followed, right? So the variable should not be start with underscore, and it should not be start with dollar symbol like this. So similarly in SPSS also what you have to do is, so the variable names may be included in letters and then numbers only, but must begin with the letter only here, and do not use any kind of symbols here like plus, minus, division, and no space in between them in variable names. So what are the different types of variables? So some of the variables will be numeric variables, which contains only the numerical numbers only, and letters are not allowed. And string variables is that kind, which may contain letters as well as the numbers. And this SPSS prefers the numeric variables wherever possible. So except in classes with a definite infinite possibilities, which can able to convert the string variables to the numeric variables. Okay, so some of the what are the different types of variables we're having is that numerical variables, which may contain only that numbers, and string variables, which contain both the combination of letters and numbers, and SPSS variables. This can able to prefer only which is going to be converted from string variable to the numeric variables. And next question is that what are the different types of measurements we are having? So what are the different types of levels of measurement we are having normally? So some of the levels will be nominal level, ordinal level, rank order. So these are some of the different levels of measurement what are going to be considered. And next thing is that what are missing values. So this thing have to be identified. So while gathering the data, what will happen is definitely there may be a chance of missing data. So what are missing values actually? So the missing value is able to designate either missing information, or it may able to indicate that a particular question was not asked of the particular case. So based on this, we're having two types of missing values, like system missing and coded missing. So system missing means where the column is left blank, and coded missing value means where a particular code is designated to indicate a missing value. Right. So the missing values designate either missing information, so where someone did not provide an answer, or it may able to indicate the particular question was not asked of this particular case. So that should be the missing value. So normally we're having two types of missing values. So first thing is the system missing and coded missing. So where the column is left blank is nothing but system missing, and where a particular code is designated to indicate missing, that should be coded missing. Define about codes is another kind of question that may come. So SPSS mainly prefer the numeric variables wherever possible. So except in cases with infinite possibilities like names, so which can able to convert this variable to the numerical variables. Okay. So when the items require coding, so assign some numbers instead of letters to the responses, and these numbers can able to simplify this data entry analysis. So then recorded information is also going to be provided in detail as much as possible, and wherever the doubt is there, so it is better to code more information than the less. So this should be the thing about the information about the codes. And next question is that illustrate some structure of the sample code book. So how the code books looks like. So what is the structure? How do we follow? So normally previously I said some of the variables that are present in the code book will be this variable names, type, missing values, and levels of measurement. If I'm going to take nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio, scale, and dichotomy, and then coordinates and some of the elements, right? So then what should be the structure? This is the structure what we have to maintain. So ID, what should be the code book ID, have to be noted here, and then age is also going to be noted, uh, and then gender, race, and degree program, and year study. uh, do you live on campus, private color, or color blind? There's no Like so, these are the some of the structure what we have to be follow for define the structure of the code book here. So, what are the different types of data? That is the question that may come. So, what is the different types of data? So, this is the overview of different types of data. So, first thing is that qualitative data. So, the qualitative data is will be of two types: of nominal data and ordinal data. And then quantitative data will be of two types again: discrete data and continuous data. So, discrete data means where the number of students in a class is nothing but a discrete data, and the number of workers in the company, and the number of home runs in a baseball game. So these are all some of the examples of discrete data which comes under the quantitative data. Again, this quantitative is again divided into two types like continuous data. So continuous means the height of the children. So for every 1 month the height is going to be increased, right? So the height is increasing and it should be continuous mode. So that's why it comes under continuous data. And square footage of 2 bedroom house, and then speed of the cars. Example, suppose initially speed will be 10, 20, 30, 40. Then the variable is man, and then decreasing also possible, right? So that should be the continuous data. So the discrete data and then continuous data will be the example of quantitative data. And qualitative data. So what is qualitative data means? This qualitative data again will be of two categories like nominal data and ordinal data. And nominal data means like gender. So gender means women on men, hair color, blonde or black, brown, and then ethnicity, Hispanic, Asian, like this. So this kind of data comes under nominal one. Okay. Suppose ordinal data is also one of the type of this qualitative data. So the ordinal data is nothing but uh, first, second, third letters grades like A, B, C, and then economic status like low, medium, high. So these are all will be the ordinal data. So that is the difference between the nominal one and ordinal one. So nominal means gender, color, right? And ordinal means where we have to be continuous. Continuity will be there. So first, second, and then third, and letters like A, B, C, like this. So these are the question may come. So what is different types of data, or what are different types of qualitative data, and what are the different types of quantitative data? And next question is that what is the differences between quantitative data and qualitative data? That is another question. So quantitative data and quantitative differences. So if I'm going to take the quantitative data on left side and qualitative data on right side, so the quantitative data is going to be expressed as a number, but here it cannot be expressed as a number, and it can be quantified, but here it cannot be measured. So the quantitative data can be measured by numerical variables, whereas the qualitative data is going to be measured, or it can able to consist of words, pictures, symbols, and not the numbers. That should be the qualitative data. Quantified quantity should be present in the form of numbers, that is numerical variables. Then qualitative data should be presented not in the form of numbers. So some of the examples of this quantitative data will be scores on tests and exams like 85, 67, 90, and weight of the person, shoe size, and then temperature in the room. So these are some of the examples of quantitative data. And then the qualitative data means here the color of the sea, your favorite holiday destination like Hawaii or New Zealand, and names as John, Patricia, ethnicity like American, Indian, Asian. So that should be example of qualitative data. So the color of the sea, right? And what are the differences between nominal data and ordinal data? So that is another question that may come. So nominal data is going to be used for labeling the variables without any type of quantitative value, and ordinal data is going to be placed in some kind of by their position on the scale. Okay, so the nominal data just as the name without applying on the order. Actually, the nominal data could be just called the labels, and ordinal data may indicate the superiority. So, however, you cannot do arithmetic with the ordinal numbers because they will show only the sequence here. Okay, so the nominal data is going to be used for labeling the variable without any type of quantitative value, whereas the nominal value comes from the Latin word like nomen, which means the name, and this nominal data is just a name, a thing, without applying it to the without applying it to an order. When it comes to ordinal data, so the ordinal data is the data which is placed on some kind of the order by the position on the scale. Suppose the ordinal data may be able to indicate the superiority, however, you cannot do that arithmetic on this ordinal data also. So, example, if I take nominal, uh, gender like men, women, hair color, and then martial status, and then authenticity. So these are some of the examples of this nominal data. Ordinal data means first, second, third letter grades are A, B, C. So when a company asks the customer to rate to sales of the experience on a scale of 1 to 10 and economic status like low, medium, high. So these are some of the examples of this ordinal data. And similarly, another type of question that may come, that is the discrete and continuous data. So discrete data is the one that involves only the integers, and discrete values cannot be subdivided into parts. For example, if the number of children in the class is discrete data, you cannot count 1.5 kids. Okay, so that is the example of that discrete data. So discrete data is the count that involves only the integer, and discrete values cannot be subdivided into parts. For example, the number of children in a class. So if it is a discrete one, so you cannot write mention it as 1.5. Either you can able to write 1 or you can able to write 2 only. Some example, number of students in the class, a number of workers in the company, number of home runs in basketball game, and the number of test sequences that can be answered correctly. Like this. So some of the examples. The count is going to measure here. When it comes to continuous one, so here the continuous data divided into finer levels. So that is, it cannot be measured on scale or continuous or having any numeric value. And these some of the examples like the amount of time required to complete the project, and then height of the children, and the square footage of 2-bedroom house, and speed of the car. The data is going to be varying, right? So just know what I said in previous slides. So that is the continuous data. So like this are some of the questions that may come between the discrete and then continuous data, right? Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.